I stood at the edge of our penthouse balcony, the city sprawling beneath me like a glittering lie. 40 years. 40 years of shared mornings, whispered promises, and sacrifices that carved themselves into my bones. I was 62, and the weight of those decades pressed against my chest as I gripped the cold railing. The skyline of Chicago shimmered in the twilight, but all I could see was the letter Richard left on our mahogany dining table 3 days ago. Eleanor, I found someone who makes me feel alive again. I'm sorry. No explanation. No remorse. Just those words scrawled in his careless handwriting, followed by the gut-punch revelation that this someone was Claire, my assistant of 5 years. Claire, with her bright smiles and eager nods, who'd sat across from me in boardrooms, taking notes while I built an empire. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a violation of everything I'd poured my soul into. I'd given Richard everything, my youth, my trust, my ambition, and he'd traded it for her. The wind whipped my silver hair across my face, and I let it sting. I didn't cry. Tears were a luxury I'd long since spent. Instead, I turned back into the penthouse, the silence deafening without Richard's booming laugh or the clink of his whiskey glass. The letter still lay where he'd left it, next to a half-empty bottle of Bordeaux we'd opened to celebrate our anniversary a month ago. I picked it up, my fingers trembling not with sorrow but with a fury so sharp it felt like a blade. He thought he could walk away, start fresh with Claire, and leave me to crumble. He didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment for years, not out of suspicion, but out of instinct. A woman like me doesn't build a company like Paragon Enterprises without learning to guard her own back. Paragon was my creation, born from sleepless nights and relentless grit while Richard played the charming frontman. He was the face-shaking hands, closing deals with his easy grin while I was the mind, crafting strategies and navigating the cutthroat world of corporate real estate. We'd started with nothing, a tiny office in a crumbling Chicago warehouse, and I'd turned it into a billion-dollar empire. Richard loved the spotlight, and I let him have it because I loved him. But love doesn't blind you forever. 10 years ago, I started noticing the late nights, the vague excuses, the way his eyes lingered on younger women at galas. I didn't confront him. Instead, I began to plan. Quietly, methodically, I shifted assets, restructured shares, and buried my name in the fine print of Paragon's ownership documents. By the time he left that letter, I owned 51% of the company he thought was his. I poured myself a glass of the Bordeaux, the deep red catching the light like blood. The first sip burned, but it steadied me. Claire had been in my office just last week, her ponytail swinging as she handed me reports, her voice bright as she complimented my leadership. "You're an inspiration, Eleanor," she'd said, and I'd believed her. I'd mentored her, shared my wisdom, even invited her to our home for dinners. She'd sat at my table, laughing with my husband, while plotting to take my place. The betrayal wasn't just Richard's, it was hers, too. And they'd both pay for it. I walked to my study, the walls lined with awards and framed articles about Paragon's rise. My desk was a fortress of order, contracts, financials, and a single photograph of Richard and me from our wedding day. Young and fearless, his arm around my waist. I traced the edge of the frame, my heart twisting. I didn't want revenge for the sake of cruelty. I wanted justice for the years I'd given, for the trust I'd placed, for the empire I'd built while he took the credit. I opened my laptop and pulled up the company's shareholder agreement. The plan was already in motion, but it wasn't enough to ruin him financially. Richard needed to feel the weight of his betrayal, to understand what he'd thrown away, and Claire should learn what it meant to cross me. The phone rang, shattering the silence. It was my lawyer, Margaret, her voice calm but urgent. Eleanor, the board's asking questions about Richard's absence at the quarterly meeting. They're worried about stability. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Let them worry, I said. I'll handle the board. Just make sure the transfer documents are ready. Margaret hesitated, then asked, "Are you sure about this? Once you pull the trigger, there's no going back." I looked at the wedding photo again, at the man who'd promised me forever. "I've never been more sure," I replied. That night, I dreamed of our early days, Richard and I in that cramped warehouse office, laughing over cheap coffee as we dreamed of conquering the world. I woke with a start, my chest tight, and realized I wasn't just angry. I was grieving, not for the man who'd left me, but for the version of us I'd believed in. I got out of bed and opened my safe, pulling out a folder I'd kept hidden for years. Inside were documents that could unravel Richard's legacy, proof of his shady deals, his offshore accounts, his reckless gambles with company funds. I'd collected them not out of spite, but as insurance. Now, they were my weapon. I spent the morning reviewing my plan. Step 1 was to call an emergency board meeting. Richard had always relied on me to manage the board's egos, and they trusted me implicitly. They didn't know I'd already secured their loyalty through years of subtle alliances and carefully placed favors. Step 2 was Claire. She was still my assistant, blissfully unaware that I knew about her and Richard. Keep her close. Let her think she'd won, until the moment I pulled the rug out from under her. Step 3 was harder, facing my children, Daniel and Sophia. They adored their father, and I'd shielded them from his flaws. Telling them the truth would break their hearts, but I couldn't let Richard's lies poison them too. I called Claire into my office that afternoon. She walked in, her smile as bright as ever, but I saw the flicker of nerves in her eyes. "Eleanor, I was so sorry to hear about you and Richard," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I nodded, letting her think I was broken. "Thank you, Claire. I'll need your help more than ever now." She agreed eagerly, and I handed her a stack of meaningless tasks to keep her busy. As she left, I felt the first spark of satisfaction. She had no idea what was coming. By evening, I was back on the balcony, the city now cloaked in darkness. The stars were hidden, just like the truth had been for so long. I thought of Richard, probably with Claire in some hotel, believing he'd escaped. He didn't know I held the keys to his world. I didn't want to destroy him out of hatred. I wanted to rebuild myself, to reclaim the power I'd let him borrow for too long. And when I was done, he'd see the woman he'd underestimated all along. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, a familiar stage where I'd played the dutiful wife and silent genius for decades. Today, I sat at the head of the table, my tailored blazer sharp against the leather chair. The board members filed in, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Richard's absence was a gaping hole, and I could feel their questions hanging in the air. I'd rehearsed this moment in my mind 1,000 times. Each word a brick in the wall I was building around my future. "Good morning," I began, my voice steady, cutting through their murmurs. "I know you're concerned about Richard, but I assure you, Paragon is in capable hands." Their eyes locked on me, some skeptical, others relieved. I was their anchor now, and I'd make sure they never looked back. I presented the quarterly figures, each slide a testament to my meticulous work. The numbers were flawless, and I saw nods of approval ripple across the table. Then came the pivot. "As you know, Richard has stepped away from his duties," I said, letting the words land like a stone in still water. "I've taken full operational control, and I propose we formalize my role as CEO." A few eyebrows shot up, but no one protested. They knew I'd been the brains behind Paragon's success, even if Richard had taken the bows. I passed around the shareholder agreement, my name glaring in bold as the majority owner. "This ensures stability," I added, watching their reactions. They signed without hesitation, their trust in me absolute. Step 1 was complete. After the meeting, I lingered in the boardroom, staring out at the Chicago skyline. The city felt different now, like it was mine to command. My phone buzzed. Sophia, my daughter, her voice tight with worry. "Mom, where's Dad? He's not answering my calls." I closed my eyes, the weight of her question pressing against my resolve. "He's taking some time away, sweetheart," I said, hating the lie but knowing the truth would hurt more. "Come over tonight. We'll talk." She agreed, but I heard the doubt in her voice. Daniel would be harder. My son worshipped his father, and I dreaded the moment I'd have to shatter that illusion. Claire knocked on the door, her tablet clutched like a shield. "Eleanor, I finished the reports you asked for," she said, her tone too eager, too perfect. I smiled, the kind of smile that hid a storm. "Thank you, Claire. Why don't you join me for lunch? We could use some time to catch up." Her eyes widened, but she nodded, probably thinking she'd won my trust. I wanted her close, not out of kindness, but to watch her squirm as my plan unfolded. We went to a quiet bistro, and I let her chatter about meaningless projects while I studied her. She was younger than I'd been when I met Richard, her confidence bordering on arrogance. Did she think she could replace me? Did she think she could wear my life like a stolen dress? Over dessert, I leaned in, my voice low. "Claire, you've been such a help these past years. Tell me, what do you want for your future here?" Her smile faltered, just for a second, but I caught it. "Oh, I just want to keep learning from you," she said, her words rehearsed. I nodded, sipping my coffee, letting her think she was safe. Back at the office, I pulled up the folder from my safe. The documents inside were a ticking bomb, evidence of Richard's financial missteps. Yes, but also emails between him and Claire, stolen from his unsecured personal account. They'd been careless, thinking I was too busy running Paragon to notice. I wasn't ready to use them yet, but their existence was a comfort, like a loaded gun in my drawer. That evening, Sophia arrived at the penthouse, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes searching mine. She looked so much like Richard's same sharp jaw. Same intensity, but she had my strength. We sat on the couch, a bottle of wine between us, and she asked again about her father. I wanted to tell her everything, to unburden myself, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I told her about Paragon, about how I'd built it from nothing. Your father was the face, but I was the heart, I said, my voice catching. She reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. I always knew that, Mom, she whispered. I held her gaze, wondering if she'd still love me when she learned the truth. After she left, I called Daniel. He was in New York, working at Paragon's satellite office, and his voicemail was curt. Mom, I'm busy. Call you tomorrow. I hung up, my heart sinking. Daniel had always been Richard's shadow, eager for his approval. I'd need to tread carefully with him, or I'd lose him too. I turned to my laptop, drafting an email to the board about the next phase of my plan, a restructuring that would quietly strip Richard's influence from Paragon's operations. It was surgical, precise, and by the time he noticed, it would be too late. I couldn't sleep that night. The penthouse felt like a mausoleum, every corner haunted by memories of Richard. I walked to his study, a room I rarely entered. His desk was cluttered with golf trophies and framed photos of him with industry titans, none of me. I opened a drawer and found a small velvet box, the kind that holds a ring. My breath caught. It wasn't for me. The receipt inside was dated 2 weeks ago, made out to Claire. The rage came back, hot and alive, but beneath it was something colder, resolve. I slipped the box into my pocket, a reminder of what I was fighting for. The next morning, I met with Margaret again. She handed me the final transfer documents, her eyes sharp with concern. Eleanor, this will ruin him, she said. I nodded, my jaw tight. He ruined himself. She didn't argue. As I signed the papers, I felt a shift, like the ground settling after an earthquake. Richard had left me, but I wasn't the one who'd lost everything. He'd built his life on my foundation, and I was about to pull it out from under him. The sun rose over Chicago, painting the skyline in hues of gold and ash, but I felt no warmth. I stood in my office at Paragon, the glass walls reflecting my silhouette a woman remade, not broken. The velvet box from Richard's desk sat on my desk, a silent accusation. I hadn't opened it again, but its presence fueled me. Today was the day I'd start tightening the noose. I called Claire into my office, my voice calm, almost warm. She arrived, her heels clicking on the marble floor, her smile a carefully crafted mask. Eleanor, you wanted to see me? She asked, her tone light but her eyes wary. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. We need to discuss your role moving forward. I watched her settle, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She was good at playing innocent, but I saw the cracks her slight fidget, the way her gaze darted to the door. You've been invaluable, Claire, I said, leaning back in my chair. I'm promoting you to project manager for the new downtown development. Her eyes widened, greed flickering before she masked it with gratitude. Oh, Eleanor, thank you. I won't let you down. I smiled, knowing she would. The project was a trap, a high-profile venture I'd rigged to fail. Every decision she made would be scrutinized. Every misstep documented. I'd make sure her fall was public and humiliating. After she left, I turned to my computer, pulling up the emails between her and Richard. They were careless, almost giddy, as if they thought they'd already won. One from Claire read, "She's too busy to notice us. Darling, we're free." My stomach twisted, but I saved the file to a secure drive. I wasn't ready to expose them, yet timing was everything. Instead, I focused on the board. I'd scheduled a follow-up meeting to propose a new initiative, one that would cement my control while erasing Richard's legacy. The board trusted me, but they were sharks, loyal only to profit. I'd give them that, wrapped in a vision of Paragon's future without Richard's name attached. My phone buzzed. "Daniel." I answered, bracing myself. "Mom, what's going on with Dad?" Sophia said he's gone. His voice was sharp, accusing, and I felt the familiar pang of guilt. "He's left, Daniel," I said, choosing my words carefully. "For someone else." Silence stretched, heavy and raw. "Who?" he demanded. I hesitated, then said, "Claire." The line went quiet again, and I could almost hear his world shifting. "I need to see you," he said finally. "I'm coming to Chicago tomorrow." I agreed, dreading the confrontation but knowing it was inevitable. That evening, I met Sophia for dinner at a quiet restaurant near the lake. She was quieter than usual, her eyes red-rimmed. "I called Dad," she admitted, twisting her napkin. "He said he's happy." "Mom, how could he do this?" I reached for her hand, my heart aching. "He's made his choice," I said softly. "But we're still a family, you, me, and Daniel." She nodded, but her eyes were distant. I wanted to tell her about my plan, about the justice I was crafting, but I couldn't risk her judgment. Not yet. Back at the penthouse, I pored over the documents from my safe. Richard's shady deals were worse than I'd remembered. Offshore accounts funneled through shell companies. Funds siphoned from Paragon's budget for personal expenses. I turned a blind eye for years. Protecting him. Protecting us. No more. I drafted a report for the board, anonymizing the source but detailing enough to raise alarms. I present it as a discovery, a reason to audit Richard's tenure. It would be the first crack in his reputation. Subtle but devastating. The next morning, Daniel arrived, his jaw set, his eyes stormy. He looked so much like Richard in his youth, tall, broad-shouldered, with the same stubborn fire. We sat in the living room, the city humming below us. "Tell me everything," he demanded. I took a deep breath and started with the truth, or as much as I could bear to share. I told him about Richard's affair, about Claire, about the letter. I left out my ownership of Paragon, my plans for revenge. He listened, his hands clenched, his face darkening with every word. "He's my father," he said finally, his voice breaking. "How could he do this to you? To us?" I pulled him into a hug, feeling his shoulders shake. For the first time, I wondered if my revenge would cost me my children. After Daniel left, I met with Margaret at her office. She slid a folder across her desk, finalized documents transferring Richard's remaining shares to a trust one controlled. "It's done," she said. "He has no legal claim to Paragon now." I nodded, the weight of it settling over me. I'd stripped him of his empire, but it wasn't enough. I needed him to feel the betrayal, to face the consequences of his choices. I asked Margaret to leak a rumor to the press. Just a whisper. About Richard's personal indiscretions affecting his leadership. It would plant the seed. Let the world start questioning his character. That night, I found myself back on the balcony, the city lights blurring through a haze of exhaustion. I thought of Richard and Claire, probably celebrating their new life, oblivious to the storm I was brewing. I thought of Sophia and Daniel, caught in the crossfire of their father's sins. And I thought of myself, the girl who'd once loved Richard with every fiber of her being. She was still inside me, but she was no longer in charge. The woman I'd become was sharper, colder, and ready to fight. I clutched the velvet box in my pocket, its weight a reminder of the life I was reclaiming. Tomorrow, I take the next step. The boardroom was colder today, or maybe it was just me. I stood at the head of the table, my hands steady as I laid out the audit report. The board members leaned forward, their eyes narrowing as they read the anonymized summary of Richard's financial missteps. "These irregularities date back years," I said, my voice calm but firm. "We need a full investigation to protect Paragon's reputation." They nodded, their faces grim. I saw the shift in their eyes. Richard was no longer their golden boy. I'd planted the seed, and now it would grow, fed by their ambition and fear of scandal. By the time I left the room, they were already discussing how to distance Paragon from Richard's name. Claire was waiting in my office, her tablet glowing with updates on the downtown project. She was efficient. I give her that, but her every word grated against me now. "The contractors are ahead of schedule," she said, her smile too bright. I nodded, pretending to care. "Good work, Claire. Keep me posted." She lingered, as if expecting praise. But I turned to my computer, dismissing her. I could feel her hesitation, the way she wanted to ask about Richard but didn't dare. Good. Let her stew in her guilt. I'd assigned her a project doomed to collapse under public scrutiny. Faulty permits, inflated budgets, all traceable to her decisions. When it imploded, she'd take the fall, and Richard would watch his new love crash and burn. That afternoon, I met Daniel and Sophia for lunch at a cafe near Paragon's headquarters. They sat across from me, their faces tense, a mirror of my own buried pain. Daniel spoke first, his voice low. "I talked to Dad. He says he's sorry, but he's not coming back." Sophia's eyes filled with tears, and I reached for her hand, my own heart twisting. "He's made his choice," I said, hating how cold I sounded. "But we're stronger than this. We'll get through it together." Daniel's jaw tightened, and I saw the anger in him, not just at Richard but at me for staying so composed. "Why aren't you fighting for him, Mom?" he asked. The question stung, but I couldn't tell him I was fighting, just not the way he expected. I changed the subject, asking about their lives, their work. Sophia was a graphic designer, her passion lighting up her face as she talked about a new project. Daniel, ever the pragmatist, was climbing the ranks at Paragon's New York office. I listened, memorizing their voices, their gestures, knowing these moments were fragile. I'd shielded them from Richard's flaws for so long, but soon they'd see the truth. I just hoped they'd forgive me for what I was about to do. Back at the office, I met with Margaret to review the press leak. A small article had appeared in a local business journal, hinting at personal and professional lapses in Richard's leadership. It was subtle, but the ripples were already spreading. Stock prices dipped slightly, and I saw whispers on social media. I instructed Margaret to feed the story slowly, letting the media speculate while I stayed above the fray. Richard would see it soon, and he'd know it was me. I wanted him to feel the walls closing in, just as I had when I read his letter. That evening, I found a voicemail from Richard. His voice was smooth, almost pleading. "Eleanor, we need to talk. I didn't mean for this to hurt you. Call me." I deleted it, my pulse racing. He didn't get to play the victim. I opened my laptop and reviewed the next phase of my plan, a public announcement of my role as CEO, paired with a restructuring that would erase Richard's name from Paragon's history. I'd already had his office cleared out, his awards and photos boxed up and sent to storage. It was as if he'd never existed. But erasing him wasn't enough. I needed him to face me, to see the woman he'd betrayed. I sent him a text, short and cold. "Meet me at the penthouse tomorrow, 7 p.m. He replied within minutes, agreeing. I didn't know what I'd say, but I knew it would be the start of his reckoning. I spent the night preparing, not just for Richard but for Claire. I'd invited her to a gala next week, a high-profile event where Paragon would unveil its new vision. She'd be there, smiling for the cameras, unaware that I'd orchestrated her public humiliation. The next day, I stood in the penthouse, the velvet box in my hand. I finally opened it, revealing a diamond ring, simple but elegant. It was exactly the kind of ring I'd have chosen for myself, which made it worse. I set it on the dining table, next to his letter, and waited. When Richard arrived, he looked older, his charm frayed at the edges. "Eleanor," he started, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said. "You don't get to explain." His eyes fell on the ring, and he froze. "Where did you find that?" he asked, his voice hoarse. I smiled, cold and sharp. "You left it behind, just like you left me." We stood there, the silence heavy with 40 years of history. I didn't yell or cry, I didn't need to. He saw it in my eyes, the strength he'd underestimated. "I own Paragon, Richard," I said, watching his face crumple. "Every share, every decision. You have nothing." He tried to speak, but I cut him off. "You'll see what happens when you betray me." I turned away, leaving him with the ring and the letter, the remnants of his betrayal. As the door closed behind him, I felt a strange calm. The fight was just beginning, but I was ready. Richard's face lingered in my mind as I drove to Paragon the next morning, the memory of his shock fueling me. He'd stood in our penthouse, clutching at words that wouldn't come, his world unraveling in the face of my calm. I'd waited 40 years to see him powerless, and now that I felt no joy, only a hollow resolve. The city blurred past my car window, its lights a reminder of the empire I'd built and the war I was waging. Today, I'd push the next piece into place, Claire's downfall at the gala. I'd spent weeks ensuring every detail of the downtown project was a house of cards, ready to collapse under her name. She'd walk into that gala thinking she was rising, only to find herself exposed. At the office, I reviewed the gala's agenda with my event planner, Lisa. She was sharp, loyal, and discreet, qualities I'd come to value more than ever. Make sure Claire's presentation is the centerpiece, I said, my voice even. I want her front and center. Lisa nodded, sensing the weight behind my words but asking no questions. I handed her a USB drive with doctored reports, subtly altered to exaggerate Claire's oversights. The media would be there, hungry for a story, and I'd give them one, the ambitious assistant who overreached and failed. Mid-morning, Sophia called, her voice trembling. "Mom, I saw the article about Dad. Is it true? Did he mismanage Paragon?" I closed my eyes, hating the pain in her voice. "It's complicated, sweetheart," I said. "Come to the gala. You'll see what I'm doing to protect our family." She hesitated, then agreed. I knew she'd question me later, but I needed her there, not just as my daughter but as a witness to my justice. Daniel was another story. He texted me, short and cold, "I'm staying in New York. I can't deal with this." His absence stung, but I couldn't let it derail me. I'd win him back when this was over. Claire stopped by my office, her confidence gratingly intact. "I'm so excited for the gala," she said, her eyes bright. "Thank you for trusting me with the project." I smiled, letting her think she'd earned it. "You've worked hard, Claire. You deserve the spotlight." She beamed, oblivious to the trap. As she left, I opened my laptop and finalized the press release for the gala, announcing my role as CEO and Paragon's new direction. Richard's name was nowhere in it. I'd erased him from the narrative, just as he'd tried to erase me from his life. The day of the gala arrived, and I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the neckline of my emerald gown. It was bold, regal, a statement of the woman I'd become. The penthouse felt empty without Richard's presence. But I didn't miss him, I missed the idea of him, the man I'd thought he was. I slipped the velvet box into my purse, a talisman of my resolve. At the venue, the ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and the hum of Chicago's elite. I moved through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on my new role. Sophia arrived, her dress simple but elegant, her eyes searching mine for answers. I hugged her, whispering, "Stay close tonight." Claire took the stage, her presentation polished but built on lies I'd fed her. She spoke of the downtown project with confidence, unaware that the slides behind her showed inflated budgets and unapproved permits. The audience murmured, reporters scribbling furiously. I stood at the back, my heart steady, watching her unravel. When the Q&A began, a journalist stood, her question sharp. "Ms. Harper, how do you explain the discrepancies in the project's financials?" Claire froze, her smile slipping. She stammered, looking to me for rescue, but I stayed silent. The room turned on her, questions piling up. her credibility crumbling. After her presentation, I took the stage, my voice clear and commanding. Paragon is moving forward, I said, outlining my vision for the company. We've uncovered challenges in past leadership, but I assure you, we're stronger than ever. The applause was thunderous, and I felt Sophia's gaze on me, a mix of pride and confusion. Claire slipped out of the room, her face pale, and I let her go. Her humiliation was only the beginning. Back at the penthouse, I found a note slipped under my door. It was from Richard. His handwriting shaky. Eleanor. I saw the gala coverage. I know what you're doing. Please, let's talk. I crumpled it, my anger flaring. He didn't get to beg now. I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, the city sprawling below. The gala had been a triumph, but it wasn't enough. I needed Richard to face me again, to admit his betrayal. I texted him, tomorrow. My office. Noon. The next day, he arrived, his suit wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot. Eleanor, you're destroying me, he said, his voice raw. I leaned back in my chair, the velvet box on my desk. You destroyed us, I replied. You and Claire. He flinched at her name, and I saw the guilt in his eyes. I didn't mean for this, he said. I love her. The words cut, but I didn't flinch. You loved me once too, I said. And I built this company while you took the credit. Now it's mine. He stared at me, seeing the truth for the first time. I slid the box toward him. Take it. Give it to her. But know this, you have nothing left. He left without a word, the box in his hand. I watched him go, feeling the weight of my victory and its cost. I'd won. But at what price? Sophia's trust was wavering. Daniel was distant, and I was alone in the empire I'd reclaimed. I turned to the window, the city glittering below, and wondered if justice was worth the emptiness it left behind. The morning after Richard's visit, I woke to a flood of notifications. The gala had sparked a media frenzy, with headlines dissecting Claire's failure and Paragon's bold new direction under my leadership. I scanned the articles, my coffee growing cold. They called me a visionary, titan, but none mentioned the cost, the sleepless nights, the ache in my chest, the fear that my children would never look at me the same. I'd won the company, humiliated Claire, and stripped Richard of his legacy. But victory felt like a hollow crown. I set my phone down and stared at the skyline, searching for the resolve that had carried me this far. Sophia called, her voice urgent. Mom, I saw the news. What happened to Claire? And Dad, where is he? I invited her over, knowing I couldn't hide the truth much longer. When she arrived, her eyes were sharp with questions. We sat in the living room, the silence heavy between us. I need to tell you everything, I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. I told her about Richard's affair, the years of subtle betrayals, and how I'd secured Paragon to protect our family. I left out the darkest parts, the doctored reports, the leaked rumors, but her face softened as I spoke. I'm doing this for us, I said. She hugged me, her tears soaking my shoulder. I'm proud of you, Mom, she whispered. But be careful. Her words stayed with me as I headed to the office. Claire was there. Her desk cleared out. Her resignation letter waiting on my chair. I can't stay. It read. I'm sorry for everything. I felt a flicker of pity. But it passed. She'd made her choices. Just as Richard had. I shredded the letter and turned to my next task. A press conference to solidify Paragon's future. The board had approved my restructuring plan. And today I'd announce it to the world. I practiced my speech. Each word a brick in the wall between my past and my future. Daniel's absence gnawed at me. I called him. Leaving a voicemail. I need you. Daniel. Come home. He didn't respond. But I couldn't dwell on it. The press conference was packed. Cameras flashing as I took the podium. Paragon is more than a company. I said. My voice ringing with conviction. It's a legacy of resilience. And I'm honored to lead it forward. The applause was deafening. But I felt alone on that stage. The weight of my choices pressing down. Afterward, a reporter asked about Richard's absence. I smiled, cool and composed. My focus is on Paragon's future, not its past. That evening, I found an email from Claire, sent from a personal account. Eleanor, I know you set me up. I don't blame you. I'm leaving Chicago. I deleted it. My jaw tight. She didn't get to absolve herself. But her words lingered. A crack in my armor. Was I becoming the villain in my own story? I pushed the thought away and focused on the next step, ensuring Richard's financial ruin. I'd frozen his accounts through the trust, leaving him with just enough to survive but not enough to start over. He'd feel the weight of his betrayal every day. The next morning, I met with Margaret to discuss the final phase. There's a board vote tomorrow, she said. They're ready to erase Richard's name from all records. I nodded, but my heart wavered. Erasing him felt like erasing part of myself, the part that had loved him, believed in him. I thanked her and drove to the lakefront, needing air. The water stretched endless before me, its surface calm but hiding currents below. I thought of my children, of the family we'd been. Could I rebuild without destroying what was left? Sophia texted, asking to meet for dinner. I agreed, choosing a quiet restaurant where we could talk. She arrived with Daniel, his presence a shock. He looked tired, his eyes guarded. I'm here because Sophia asked, he said, his voice flat. We ate in near silence, the tension thick. Finally, he spoke. I talked to Dad. He's broken. Mom, did you have to go this far? I met his gaze, my heart aching. He betrayed us. Daniel, I'm protecting our future. He shook his head, standing to leave. You're protecting yourself. Sophia grabbed his arm, pleading, but he pulled away. I watched him go, feeling the fracture in our family deepen. Back at the penthouse, I found another note from Richard, slipped under the door. Eleanor, I'm begging you. Stop this. I'll do anything. I stared at his words, my anger warring with a flicker of doubt. I'd wanted justice, but at what cost? I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, the city glittering below. The velvet box was still in my purse, a reminder of the life I'd lost. I opened it. the ring catching the light. For a moment, I saw the girl I'd been, standing at the altar with Richard, believing in forever. I closed the box, my resolve hardening. I wasn't done yet. The board vote went as planned. Richard's name stripped from Paragon's history. The press hailed me as a trailblazer, but the victory felt empty. I called Daniel, leaving another voicemail, my voice soft. I love you. Please come home. I didn't know if he'd listen, but I had to try. As I hung up, I felt a shift, not triumph, but clarity. Revenge had carried me this far, but redemption was what I needed now. For my children, for myself. Tomorrow, I'd face Richard one last time. The penthouse was quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every thought. I stood by the window, the city's pulse a distant hum. As I waited for Richard, I'd agreed to meet him here, not out of mercy but because I needed closure, not for him, but for me. The velvet box sat on the dining table, next to a bottle of Bordeaux I hadn't touched. I'd won, but the victory tasted like ash. My children were slipping away, and the empire I'd reclaimed felt like a monument to my loneliness. When the doorbell rang, my heart steadied. This was the final act. Richard looked diminished. His shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow. Eleanor, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I gestured to the couch, but he stood, pacing like a caged animal. You've taken everything, he said, his words raw. The company, my reputation, my future. I met his gaze, unflinching. You took my trust, Richard. My love, my life. You left me for her. He flinched, his hands trembling. I made a mistake, he said. Claire was a mistake. I want to come back. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't waver. You don't get to come back, I said, my voice cold. You made your choice. I pointed to the velvet box. You bought this for her, didn't you? While we were still married. He stared at it, guilt etching lines into his face. I was lost, Eleanor. I thought she'd fix me. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Fix you. I built you. Paragon was mine, and you took the credit. Now you have nothing. He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. For a moment, I saw the man I'd loved, broken and human. But pity wasn't enough to undo the past. I sat across from him, my hands folded. I didn't do this to destroy you, I said, softer now. I did it to survive. He looked up, his eyes searching mine. Then stop. He pleaded. Let me make this right. I shook my head. It's too late. The board's vote was final. The world knows what you did. He stood, his voice rising. And what about you? You set Claire up. You leaked those stories. You're not innocent. His words stung, but I held my ground. I'm not innocent, I admitted. But I'm not the one who broke us. He left, the door closing softly behind him. I sat there, the silence swallowing me. I'd wanted him to hurt, to feel my pain. But now I saw the truth. Revenge didn't heal. It only carved deeper wounds. I called Sophia, needing her voice. She answered, her tone cautious. Mom, Daniel's coming back tomorrow. He's angry, but he wants to talk. Relief flooded me, but it was tempered by fear. I'd won Paragon, but I couldn't lose my children. Thank you, I whispered. I'll see you both tomorrow. The next day, I met Daniel and Sophia at the lakefront. The wind was sharp, the water churning, a mirror of my own turmoil. Daniel's eyes were hard, but he hugged me, a small concession. I don't understand you, Mom, he said. But I don't want to lose you. Sophia nodded, her hand in mine. I took a deep breath, the truth spilling out. I took Paragon to protect us. I said, your father betrayed me, but I went too far. I'm sorry. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he didn't pull away. Just don't shut us out, he said. Sophia squeezed my hand. We're still a family, Mom. I spent the afternoon with them, talking, laughing, rebuilding what I'd nearly lost. Back at the penthouse, I opened my laptop and drafted a new press release. Not one of triumph, but of humility. Paragon's success is a shared legacy. I wrote, I honor those who built it with me, even those who've left. It wasn't an apology to Richard, but an acknowledgement that I wasn't blameless. I sent it to the board, knowing it would shift the narrative again. That evening, I walked to the balcony, the city glittering below. I thought of Claire, gone from Chicago, and Richard, a shadow of himself. I'd wanted justice, but now I saw it wasn't enough. I needed redemption not just for them, but for me. I called Margaret, my voice steady. Set up a trust for Daniel and Sophia. Half my shares. They deserve it. She paused, then said, You're sure? I nodded, though she couldn't see. It's time to let go. I poured a glass of Bordeaux, the same bottle from our anniversary. Tasted different now, less bitter. I thought of the girl I'd been, the one who'd loved Richard without fear. She was still there, but she was wiser now, scarred but whole. I'd rebuilt my life, not through revenge, but through truth. The city stretched before me, vast and alive, and for the first time in months, I felt like I belonged to it again. The morning sun filtered through the penthouse windows, casting long shadows across the floor. I sat at the dining table, the velvet box gone, given back to Richard as a final severance of our past. Today felt different, lighter, as if I'd shed a weight I hadn't known I carried. I'd spent the night drafting letters to Daniel and Sophia, not just explaining my actions but promising to be the mother they deserved, one who chose love over vengeance. I sealed the envelopes, my hands steady, and set them aside for our next meeting. The empire I'd fought for was secure, but it was my family I needed to reclaim now. Paragon. The office hummed with a new energy. The press release had softened the narrative, framing me not as a conqueror but as a steward of a shared legacy. The board called, their voices warm with approval. You've turned the tide, Eleanor. One said, Paragon's stronger than ever. I thanked them, but my mind was elsewhere in the trust I'd set up for my children, on the future I wanted to build with them. I called Lisa, my event planner, and asked her to organize a small family dinner at the penthouse. No press. No agenda, I said. Just us. She understood. Her voice soft. It'll be perfect. Mid-morning, I received an unexpected email from Claire. She was in New York, starting over at a small firm. I know I hurt you, she wrote. I was selfish, and I'll carry that guilt forever. I hope you find peace. I stared at the screen, my anger dulled by time. I didn't forgive her. Not fully. But I didn't need to hate her anymore. I deleted the email, letting her go. Richard was another story. He'd texted, asking to meet again, but I didn't respond. He'd had his chance to explain, to beg. I was done carrying his weight. Daniel and Sophia arrived that evening. The penthouse warm with candlelight and the scent of rosemary from the dinner Lisa had arranged. They looked wary but hopeful, their presence a balm to my soul. We sat around the table, the city sparkling outside. And for the first time in months, we laughed. Daniel told stories of his New York clients. Sophia shared sketches from her latest project. And I listened, memorizing every moment. I've set up a trust, I said finally, my voice soft. Half my shares in Paragon. For both of you. Their eyes widened, and Sophia reached for my hand. Mom, you didn't have to, she said. Daniel nodded, his voice thick. We just want you. I fought back tears, their love a lifeline. I went too far. I admitted. I wanted justice, but I hurt you both in the process. I'm sorry. Daniel reached across the table, his hand warm on mine. We're here now, he said. That's what matters. We talked late into the night, rebuilding the trust I'd nearly lost. When they left, I felt whole, not because of Paragon or my revenge, but because of them. The next day, I walked into Paragon with a new purpose. I met with the board, outlining a foundation to support women in business, named after my mother, who'd taught me resilience. This is Paragon's next chapter, I said, and they agreed, their faith in me unshaken. I spent the afternoon mentoring a young executive, her ambition a mirror of my own decades ago. I saw myself in her, not the woman who'd plotted revenge, but the one who'd built an empire from nothing. That evening, I stood on the balcony, the city alive below me. I thought of Richard, somewhere out there, starting over with nothing. I didn't wish him ill not anymore. I'd taken what was mine, and now I was free to build something new. I thought of Claire, chasing her own redemption, and hoped she'd find it. But most of all, I thought of my children, their laughter still echoing in my heart. I'd lost Richard, but I'd found myself. I poured a glass of Bordeaux, raising it to the skyline. To us, I whispered, not to the past, but to the future. The city answered with its endless lights, and I knew I was home. I'd fought for justice, tasted revenge, and found redemption not in destroying others, but in rebuilding myself. Paragon was mine, but so was my peace, hard-won and fiercely guarded. I stepped back inside, the balcony door closing behind me, ready for whatever came next.